Okay, hello, welcome back. So I did a video a little while, well, right when I started, and it was the first little bit of BioShock, and discussing free will versus predeterminism. Um, and it's one of my more popular videos with nearly 70 views, which should tell you how popular I am at the moment. Regardless, I didn't have as good a microphone, and I can barely be heard on the audio. I just listened to it. So, gonna go back over, and I'm not gonna do it exactly the same way. I'm just gonna basically start the game and just discuss free will versus predeterminism. So, you can do the easy, of course. But free will is the ability to choose whether we have this. The idea is that with free will, we have the ability to choose. If it's predetermined, we don't. We think we have the ability to choose, but we really don't. So one of the things about free will is that a lot of people thinks that freedom and free will and stuff like that means you can do anything you want and there are no consequences. That's not how free will works. You make your choices, and there are consequences, both good and bad, for the choices you make. So, if you choose to say, shoot somebody with a gun, for example, the consequences are, well, you're going to go to prison. It's really they're simple. Society imposes consequences. You yourself impose consequences. A lot of people who have spoken of taking lives and stuff like that, they talk about how it changes them. And soldiers have talked about this and so on, and it's not always, it's not a good thing to take a life. And I think, and for even people who don't believe there are consequences or don't think it has affected them, they are affected by it. So, and this is true of pretty much all the choices we make. We're affected by them. Now, as you've probably guessed, I'm more into free will as opposed to predeterminism. So, yes. And I finally, at this point, have free will to move about the game. It's been a little while since I played this. It's very pretty, though. Okay, I'm in freezing cold Atlantic water near a mysterious lighthouse, but it's really a very pretty game to start out with. You forget things like that. So, the weird thing is that people seem to believe that... I'm just going to take a pause here. People seem to believe that you don't have freedom. If there are limitations, you don't quite have the same freedom. So, for example, they designed this quite well. It looks like I have a lot of freedom to swim wherever I want, but if you look carefully, the flames actually create a path for me to go by. So that's, technically speaking, a limitation. But... honestly, I can swim within the limitation. I can actually go back the way I came, or I can choose progress in the storyline. Now, since I have free will, bought this game, decided to come in and play the game, obviously I'm going to want to go where the story wants me to go. I want to play the game and figure out what it's all about. So, yeah. That's kind of how the free will operates within the game. Now, this game's really interesting in that it offers you choices and then consequences for the choices. And the main choices are, if you played the game, slight spoilers, but seriously, if this... okay, one, if this game looks really interesting to you, you should play it. Two, it's been a few years, so if you're big in games, you probably already played it. But that's not the point. Anyway, the choice you're offered in this game is one of... ooh, I always love that. No gods or kings, only man. Well, okay, as you go on in the game, you're offered choices. There are these little girls who have been mutated, called little sisters in the game. They're protected by these guardians called Big Daddies. And the choice the game offers you is you have to face the Big Daddies and the little sisters with the genetic... they're basically there okay, so their bodies essentially work as factories to create this genetic material, which allows you to do kind of like throw fireballs, stuff like that, within the game. And you need that you need the stuff the little sisters carry, so, you know, it's the only thing you need to survive. But you're given a choice. You can kill the little sisters and get a lot of the stuff that you need, or you have a way you can save them but get considerably less. And it's a really fascinating choice that they offer you, because it's a question of survival, you know, whether you survive or not. And you have that choice within the game, but there are also consequences. It's the ending of the game changes depending on the choices you make. So let's look at this quote here. So Andrew Ryan's the main character. In what country is there a place for people like me? You know, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. We've had a bad day. We don't feel like we fit in or belong. Then, yeah, where's there a place for someone like me? So that's a lot of the free will choices that you make within this game are like that. And that, I'm going to give away lots of spoilers for BioShock in this. So now predeterminism says that we have the illusion of choice, but we don't really have choices. And to a certain extent, that's actually true. The video games designers are very clever in creating what appears to be a lot of choices for us, but in the end, we have to follow the same storyline. And, you know, in certain games, there are cutscenes. There are certain characters that we don't like in games that we would like to shoot, but they have a little something called plot invulnerability, which means we can't kill them because they're integral to the plot. So, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2 just came out, and there are a lot of people I know who played the original Red Dead Redemption who don't like the character of Uncle, and really, really wish the game would let them kill Uncle in Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a prequel to Red Dead Redemption. But they can't do it because, you know, he has plot armor. At some point, play the game, listen to the speech. It's a really fascinating speech, dealing with Andrew Ryan's philosophy and the way he does things like that. And we're almost one of the best visuals of the game, so let's take a look at it. That is just... It's just such an awesome concept. An underwater city. It's a very beautiful game. I recommend you play it. So, you know, you are limited because there are things you can't... Games are getting more and more advanced, so you can do more and more things, but you're still going to have considerably more things in games that you just can't do. So, you know, I can't, like, fully explore, you know, BioShock because it's not an open world. They have these set levels in it. I can fully explore the different set levels, but not all of it. Now, an interesting thing is that there are these interviews and so on that you can find in the game if you get the special edition like this is, from the people from the game maker, interview with the guy basically who created this game. And he basically, the way he talks, he doesn't believe there's any such thing as free choice in video games. And it seems like he feels that way about life in general, but video games specifically, he doesn't believe there are any sort of free choices that you can make. You're ultimately pulled and guided in a certain direction, which is true, but you have the choices over what you do within your limitations. So to give you a really good example so people really... The thing about limitations is they can make what you're doing a lot better than if you had absolutely no limitations. And I think one of the best examples of this is to compare the original Star Wars trilogy to the prequel trilogy. So the difference in those... In Star Wars, in the original Star Wars, George Lucas was extremely limited. The original one only cost $10 million, which was actually fairly cheap for that time period, for, you know, a big movie. And, you know, and even though he had a great crew of special effects people, they were still extremely limited by what they were doing and how they were doing it when they made the films, and the films were really, really good. Now we skip ahead to the prequel trilogy, and yeah, they're still pretty enjoyable. personally, I didn't like the second one. The first one was enjoyable to watch, and third one had its moments as well. Second one was almost painful to watch for me for most of it. But George Lucas had absolutely no limitations on that. The effects, he had pretty much an unlimited budget. The effects had gone, gotten so good he could do anything. So, and so on. So he created, I'm going to come back to this in a second, but he created with prequel trilogies, decent, enjoyable movies to watch, but not nearly as good as the original series. Now, we'll get to the radio. Now, this is interesting, and it's an example of the game logic. This door won't open until I pick up the radio. So yes, I have no choice but to pick up the radio, or I could just not enjoy the game. So, it's a choice between picking up the radio and not enjoying the game. Now, slight spoilers alert. Well, big spoiler for the game. You get to the point where, actually, it's almost as if it's the end of the game, but it turns out there's quite a bit after this point, but it feels like you're at the end of the game. You discover that you've been controlled from the beginning. There's actually, like, all these things that are controlling you. That you thought you had certain choices, and you thought you had kind of free will, and you discover, in certain regards, you don't have these choices or the free will you thought you did. And you were manipulated and controlled in a variety of different ways. They did it really well because, if you didn't know, if you play this game and not know that, it's a pretty big surprise, actually. So, and it's actually brilliant because it goes back over all these little things, and you're like, oh, I could have done that. Ooh, scary. And it's a very well done, very fascinating game that, in and of itself, it controls what you believe. Let's see, how do you jump? Oh, there we go. So, wrench, your first fun little toy in this game. So, yeah, it's actually brilliantly done because you don't seem to have much of a choice in a lot of the stuff that happens in the game. But then as you go along, you're given all these options. Whether you kill a little sister or not. Oh. Whew. That was intense, man. So whether you kill the little sisters or not is one of the choices you get in this game. And there are a bunch of other little things that happen throughout the game where you seem to have more choices than you think. And if you actually study it, if you go back and study the parts where your character was controlled, there's some interesting phraseology used. It's almost as if there are certain things you can't be commanded to do, which implies that you have more choice than you think as a character and within the game. So I will leave it at that. Well, actually, let's do this electro bolt thing. So those are representations of little sisters, not very good ones. Well, actually, I'll show you what a Big Daddy and little sister looks like in this game. Also, first off, one, how many people would do that without knowing the consequence? And two, how did he know that was what he was supposed to do with it? That's one of those things. I think, just my own personal theory here, I think the character, I think that's indicative that there's a little more going on than you at first believed, because the character knew what he was supposed to do, the character you're playing. And as it goes, yeah, I think he had a little bit more knowledge, so it's easy to assume that was just a mistake the game made. But I think it's one of those things that it looks kind of like a mistake at the beginning, but then in retrospect, it's like, if you find out what you find out later, you come back, it's like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense that he would be able to, do, on a subconscious level, know that that was what he's supposed to do. Okay, we're coming to the image of the little sister and the Big Daddy. That is a very blurry Big Daddy. Very scary monsters. And, you don't actually have to fight the Big Daddies in this game. But if you don't, you won't get, access to the plasmids that you need to survive in this game. Plasmids are what they are called. So, yeah, little girls are mutated. They're like monster little girls. And you can save them, either save them from being monsters or just, kill the monster for your own survival. And you have that choice within the game, but there are consequences. You get two very different endings if you kill the little girl than as opposed if you save the little girl. So anyway, that's my look, a bit of look at free will versus predeterminism. Obviously, I am just basically focusing on free will because it makes more sense that there is free will and kind of answering the predeterminism argument. I've always had a singular question. I'm going to end with this. A singular question about predeterminism. If we have no free will, if everything is predetermined, why aren't we all exactly the same? And I had one person answer that by saying, well, we have different circumstances. But the point is, if nobody had ever had free will, there would be no different circumstances. We would all be identical. We'd all be born and act exactly the same. There's a sequence in the book Wrinkle in Time where they get to a planet where nobody has free will, and literally everyone has to act and behave the same. Little kids, when they're playing, have to bounce a ball at exactly the same time. And, it's not meant to be completely realistic. It was a kid's book, but it's a very good example of this. People who have no free will act exactly the same. But we have free will, and we are a very different society here in America. Anyway, that was my redux of free will versus predeterminism. Yeah, like and subscribe if you like it. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if I didn't cover anything that was covered in the previous video that you'd like me to go into again, or if you just have questions about this, let me know and I will either respond or make another video. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.